This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, school success makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined with two new friends out of the great state of Oregon and Southern Oregon, as it is. And they are with Connecting Through Conversations. They are both the authors and creators of this, which we're going to obviously dive into in just a second. But we got Erika Bare and Tiffany Burns both joining us today. And they're in separate areas. So we have a three-way call here happening, which is actually not super common in the School Success Podcast world. So this is probably only the fourth or fifth time we've actually done this, but these are going to be fun. So we're going to have some questions for them and dive into what they've created here that's going to be there to help your school. But before we dive into all that, we always want to do introductions. So I'll pass it off to them to introduce themselves, and maybe we start with Erika Bare to do that.
Sure thing. I'm Erika Bare, and I have been an educator for over 20 years. I'm trying to figure out when you round. I still think I'm still closer to 20 than 30. I started out as a special education teacher many, many moons ago, and that's still very much where my heart lives, is supporting every student with what they need to reach their unlimited potential. I've done all kinds of fun jobs. I've been an assistant principal and principal at the high school level and elementary level. I've been a student services director, assistant superintendent, and currently serving as the superintendent in a local district here in Southern Oregon.
Awesome. All right, Tiffany.
So I've also been in education for over 20 years. I've taught elementary, middle, high school. I've worked in public, private, bilingual, homeschool settings. This would be year 14 as a school administrator, but I took this year for a professional sabbatical. And so Eric and I wrote a book a couple years ago, Connecting Through Conversation, a playbook for talking with students. And we have been having the best time traveling all over the country, doing workshops, working with districts, really helping folks build a culture of connection in their schools. And it turns out to travel all over and be a principal is kind of tricky. So this year, I'm really devoting my time to traveling around, but I've also had this wonderful opportunity to teach full time at our university here in Southern Oregon, working with pre-service teachers. So it's been a really fun, dynamic year for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for being on today. And so before we dive into what all you guys are doing and created, we always start with the same fun question. So let's see if the answers are going to be completely different, which is actually, so that's an okay thing for this question. So if I was to visit you guys in Southern Oregon, what would you say? Mitchell, you need to do this and eat this to experience Southern Oregon.
So for me, I think the experience, because we are in Ashland, which is very well known internationally for our Shakespeare Festival. So really would encourage you, even if you're not a huge Shakespeare fan, they do a ton of really phenomenal theater. So would definitely recommend you check that out. And Tiffany's going to answer that question while I think about the restaurant.
Well, I love that you said that, because I was like, it's one of two. I would say you have to check out Lithia Park. So Lithia Park it's a 100-acre park in the middle of downtown that is absolutely spectacular. The architect who did Golden Gate Park in San Francisco designed it. And it doesn't matter what time of year you go, it is in autumn, it is just bright with all kinds of different fall leaf colors. In spring, it is just absolutely blooming and bright with all the flowers. And it's the perfect place to have a picnic or to watch your kids play on the playground or to check out the duck ponds. There's ice skating in the winter. I'm going to stop talking about Lithia Park, but it's just a really sweet area. And it is right next to Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Two birds with one stone. All right, perfect. All right. And
And
then
if
where
I
we
were to take you to eat, I would probably take y'all to Omar's, which is a steakhouse. And there's so many phenomenal restaurants in Ashland. It's actually something we're really well known for. But Omar's is like a cultural experience. They haven't changed the building since, I want to say, like the late 50s, early 60s. And it's still very much like this old fashioned, old style, traditional steakhouse. And the food is phenomenal and the experience is also pretty exceptional.
all right.
And okay, my food, I'm gonna go really out there and say if you're going to Lithia Park, go by Sandwich. And our friend Melissa McMillan owns Sandwich, and it is, oh my goodness, it is fantastic food. Pastrami zombie is what I'm gonna say is like the best thing to eat, but they absolutely have vegetarian options and salad, and you can take that and go hang out in the park.
I love pastrami. So you won me as soon as you said pastrami. So that's like
I
my
mean,
favorite go-to.
yeah,
Okay.
great.
All right. So I'm gonna go. We're gonna go to this park, and then we're gonna go to this festival, and then we're gonna get a sandwich, and then we're gonna go to the steakhouse. I mean, we got that's a full 2 days right there. So when are these? When's the Shakespeare Festival? Like what month are we talking usually?
It runs October through the summer. It's really almost all year long.
Oh
So
wow.
they call it a festival, but they have, they change their lineup every year. And so October might be early, but
I think it's November.
November. Thank you. They take, September and October off, I think, but it runs all summer long. People come from all over. And again, it's not just Shakespeare, but they have a traditional Shakespearean theater, and then they have other. It's an awesome experience, and the actors are superb.
Okay. Well, thank you, ladies. Now I know. See, I do this so I can always reference back to these episodes when I go to visit a certain area. I go, I had somebody on from that area. Let's see where they told me to go eat and what we should do to experience. So, all right. Thank you. My brother lives in Oregon, but he's Cannon Beach, Oregon. So obviously a little further away, up there. He's a firefighter up there for Cannon Beach, but, cool. I love Oregon. It's beautiful. I just wish it rained less, but otherwise, it is a beautiful state. I love it. All right. Well, now we get to talk about you guys a little bit more. So I want to hear about what is this thing you guys created that we've been talking about? Tell me a little bit about what is this method and what did you guys create? And then we'll dive into some more questions about that.
So we really focused on how building a connected relationship is going to accelerate student learning. So we really know that there's a science and an art to building these relationships. And we wanted to be able to provide the science side of that. Like, here are the ingredients you need. Here's the step-by-step exactly what you need to build these relationships so that you can really accelerate student achievement and transform student behavior. By having those relationships, you see such a tremendous difference in when we really focus on how we respond to a student's behavior, how they respond in turn, how they learn and grow can be transformational for our kids and for our schools. So we really wanted to give that toolkit to all of the educators out there.
Well, and Eric and I we're on a mission to have every single student and every single school feel cared for, loved, valued, included, and feel a deep sense of belonging. And that does not happen by accident, and so our real mission is to be able to equip educators with really easy little tips and tricks and strategies and sentence stems and scripts even of how to be able to build, like Erika said, those connected relationships for learning with their students, because we really believe, and we say in our book quite a bit, that at the very heart of education is connection. And so we dive into that quite a bit.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple of years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show.
Do you feel like after COVID, like kids were obviously they need more connection, but do you feel like they were having a harder time connecting with adults then? And if so, was it also the flip side? Did you also see adults having they kind of maybe lost the art of that because of COVID, and they had to kind of almost relearn how to connect with students? Is that kind of maybe what you guys saw happen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there were so many pieces that we had to do, right? We had to stay 6 feet apart. We had to say to families that they weren't able to come in the buildings. And for Erica and I, we have such a value of having families be part of our students' education. Like my school, we call the community school. And to say that families weren't able to come in and they weren't able to have that same level of interaction was really challenging, painful. Also, so much of school is learning how to share space, and having kindergartners come in and say, oh, you can't share. We're not sharing supplies. Don't touch something that somebody else touched. That's weird. And then a huge part of what we teach, I mean, empathy is taught and empathy is learned. That's not an innate skill that students and children are just born with and come into the world having. And such a huge part of how we teach empathy is look at my face and see what my face is doing. And how do your words impact me? And how does what you're doing make me feel? And so when we had masks and we had, all these different mandates that we had to follow in order to have school be open, we had to really figure out ways to teach differently. And then how do we make up for that loss of connection? I mean, so much. What was really interesting to me is that we had all this time where we were on Zoom, like we had a lot of online school. And so we had students that were only talking when they were unmuted. So we really had to find how are there opportunities for kids to be in a room or in a space where they can communicate with each other that isn't necessarily supervised by an adult. Like, how do they have those interactions with each other? Because we're not just trying to build connection with the adults and the students, but it's also with all of the students together.
I love that. I don't know if you, Erica, did you want to share anything on that one at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would just add, students were also coming to school with a different set of skills than we might have seen previously. So they hadn't had the same opportunities to be around other kids. They hadn't had the same opportunities to practice some of those sharing space skills that we might have seen before. And so we really had to look at what skill sets are missing or showing up different. And we were seeing some behaviors that were just unusual and that we hadn't seen previously. I mean, we've always had unusual behaviors in school, but these were different. And so it really was kind of identifying, this is a lagging skill set that we have now that we're going to figure out how to fill. So it was just a matter of identifying what they hadn't learned that more students had kind of innately learned when they weren't coming out of that very strange and unusual time that we all went through.
So those that are listening that are trying to maybe somebody does feel like, hey, I feel like I do a good job connecting with students, but obviously we can always do better. And there's always new things we can learn. Is there maybe like the top 3? I know you wrote a whole book on this. Was there like a top 3 to 5 things of like, hey, here's like the 3 to 5 that I'd be like trying to focus on or remind you of that are really good for connecting with students? Is there any that kind of come to mind? Is that easy to, I don't know if that's like a good question for this that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'd say the very first one, I'll start with one, Erica, we'll bop back and forth. I would say the very first one is this idea that we need to care out loud. And so we as educators, we love kids. Kids are just the coolest humans on the planet. And Erica and I, we know that educators went into education because they love and care for kids and they think kids are awesome. And so we know that, we know that about ourselves. Anybody that's listening to a podcast on education obviously knows that and thinks that and believes that. What we need to remember is that kids don't know that. kids don't come into school and think, oh my goodness, every single adult who works at this school loves me and cares about me, and they are deeply committed to my success. Kids are coming in with their own stuff. They're coming in with their own, sometimes lack of trust. Sometimes they've had adults in their lives who weren't trustworthy or they couldn't necessarily depend on. And so our job as educators is to really clearly and explicitly and intentionally tell kids and show them how much we care about them. And Erica and I call that caring out loud. And so we have, we do a bunch of different like sentence stems that you can just say, and they're easy things, just like, I'm so glad you're here. The school is better because you're in it. Or, oh, I'm so happy to see you today. Or just, I care about you. And just, making sure we say those things, but then also building certain routines into our day-to-day interactions with students to make sure that we're also showing them that we care.
Yeah, and I'll just share really briefly one of those routines that we really want to make sure everyone is doing is really focusing in on those greetings and goodbyes. We know that for students and actually all humans, the first and last thing that they experience in an interaction is what's going to stay with them the longest and be the most impactful. So we want to really leverage those hellos and goodbyes and make sure that we're using that as an opportunity to really explicitly show care. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to take time. It's really just, oh my gosh, our class is going to be so much better today because you're here. Can't wait to get started. That's all it really is just acknowledging them and saying how excited we are. Another kind of key idea that we want to make sure that people walk away with when they're thinking about building strong relationships is this idea that a student's behavior is something that they did. It's not who they are. And so really helping separate out the student from the behavior. And that's important for the grown-ups because if we get into kind of a fixed mindset that, oh, this is a bad kid, I'm doing air quotes for anyone who's not watching, then it's really hard. Then we're just going to be struggling with difficult behavior all year long, and that's not a hopeful place to be. And the truth is we're teachers, right? We know that we can build skills. And if students aren't able to communicate in a way that works, then we have some skills to build, and we can work on that because that's not who the kid is. That's just a thing they did. It's equally important for the student to really know and understand this. And that is because it is so much easier to change what you do than who you are. So if a student starts to get into a mindset of, oh, I'm trouble, or I'm a bad kid, or I'm always making the wrong choices, then that's what they're going to continue to do because in their mind, that's just kind of who they are. So we really want to separate that out. One of the strategies that we love, and it kind of combines those two ideas of caring out loud and separating the student from behavior, is we call it the 𝑐𝑜𝑛𝑣𝑒 technique, or care out loud behavioral approach. And it's something you can weave into any conversation where you're correcting behavior with a student or your own child, to be honest. And that is, you start with saying something like, you're such a great kid. You're such an awesome kid. You're a student with a lot of integrity. You're a really nice person. You want to be really kind to your friends. Whatever it is that is true, you're a great kid. And then you're going to say, even great kids make mistakes sometimes. And that's okay. We all make mistakes. The most important thing to do when we make a mistake is take accountability and take responsibility, and then let's figure out together how to make that right. And what you're doing there is you're both separating the student from the behavior. You're still a great kid. You're still a great kid. You made a choice that wasn't a great choice, but you're still a great kid. And so we're going to figure this out. You have to take responsibility. We're going to do some learning around this, but you're a great kid. It also helps the student to see that no matter what, I still care about you. So sometimes students, especially when they have a strong relationship with a teacher, don't always want to tell the truth right away because they're worried that that educator is going to be disappointed in them, right? And so what we really want to show the student is it doesn't matter that you did this thing. I'm still going to care about you, and we're going to figure it out together. We're going to make it right. This doesn't mean we're saying you don't have to take responsibility, but we're going to work through it together, and I'm still going to care about you just as much.
I love that. Tiffany, you got more?
Well, I'm thinking, there Erica talked at the beginning a little bit about how we dove into the art and science of building relationships, and this piece that we both just find absolutely fascinating is that we're actually hardwired for connection. And so there's some brain science behind this. So we all have in our brains, we have what are called mirror neurons. And Erica and I like to think of these as our empathy cells. And so as empathetic humans, and I would say educators are just deeply empathetic humans, our mirror neurons are actually, if somebody is having an emotional experience, and we notice that and we observe that, our mirror neurons actually start to match the emotional experience that we're observing someone else having, and we start to experience it in our own bodies. So we have things like say, you're having kind of an okay day, maybe it's not a great day, and somebody comes in and they're just totally jazzed and really excited. They just got this promotion or they're super excited about this thing, and I wiggle when I'm really excited. I dance a little bit when I'm really excited. But they're having this really big excited experience, and all of a sudden you catch that. Like you're really excited for them. You're really feeling that excitement, and you've caught that emotion. The same thing can be true if you're having a really good day and somebody comes in and they're really grumpy and something happened to them that was really upsetting, and all of a sudden you kind of catch that emotion and you really start to feel that anger, that frustration that they're feeling. Well, what we know with students, oftentimes when they're having a big kind of emotional outburst that can look like a tantrum, or that can look like they're really angry about something, a lot of the time what's underneath that is some anxiety and some real fear and worry, and that's a pretty easy emotion for educators to catch. And so, as the person who's in charge in the room, it can be really easy for this person, the student that's having this big emotional outburst, for the educator to start feeling anxious and to start feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to respond to this. What am I going to do? Everybody's watching me. How am I going to get the rest of the kids on track? How am I? And they start to really pick up that anxiety. And so what we like to remind people of is mirror neurons are a real thing. And so when your mirror neurons start working in that way and you catch someone's emotion, you don't need to beat yourself up about it, but you do want to be aware, and you want to take a minute to just kind of get yourself grounded. I like to think about putting both feet flat on the floor. I work on really taking some slow, deep breaths. I might get a drink of water, and just really working to make sure that the emotions that I'm putting out are worth catching. And Erica can explain that piece, but it's this idea that it's so easy when students kind of start to get louder and faster and they start to go up for us to join them. And what we want to do is remember to go lower and slower, and just really and intentionally kind of slow our breathing, slow our speech down.
Yeah, and the great news about this is we can use it to our advantage, right? Because we can catch other people's emotions. They can also catch ours. So we want to be really intentional that we're setting out emotions that we want others to catch, right? And as the adult in the space, we have the most contagious emotion. Like we like to say, the adult sets the weather in the space. So we have that opportunity to really set the tone. If we go to that really anxious place along with the student who's really struggling, all of a sudden, all of the other students in the space are going to be catching that from you and this other student. And then we've got this big ball of anxiety, and nobody wants that. So we need to be really intentional about putting out emotions that we really want our students to catch. And even that student that's really escalated, they will start to pick up on those cues. They will start to breathe with you, and they'll start to catch your calm as well. So we really just want to focus on making sure that our emotions are something that are worth catching.
Hey, I just want to take a really quick break from the podcast to highlight one of our amazing partners and sponsors, ClassReach. If you're a new school administrator or founder and are struggling to keep up with all the hassles of planting a new school, like collecting tuition, communicating with parents, or handling student data, then you need ClassReach. ClassReach is the all-in-one software that helps with everything from admissions and tuition to classroom management and parent communications. Sign up for a free consultation with one of their school specialists and see how ClassReach can help your school grow today. You guys can check them out online, classreach.com. They are a kingdom-minded company, and I love their leadership team there. I've become friends with a lot of them. They truly are a great company. I support them, and I love them, and you guys will love them too. Check them out at classreach.com. Now, back to the show. One of my favorite things that I hear people say around that line, and you kind of said about setting the weather, is like the adults, or the ones in the room, need to be like a thermostat, not the thermometer. And like you're setting the temperature for like, this is what the attitude is going to be in the room, because like the students are looking to you for leadership, they're looking to you for guidance. And so, and I love you said it too, we're the adults, and it's like it's our responsibility to lead by example on that side. So you guys touched on all awesome things and great things there. So thank you for sharing a little bit about the book, so those people can get a little bit of like what's it about, what you guys dive into in there. And I know you and I chatted about this before all of this, but we talked about kids who come out of COVID maybe are behind in developmentally in some different areas with like getting along with people and conversation and all that stuff academically. Do you guys firmly believe that people they can be caught up to where they should be and even surpass that, or do you feel like it's a battle they kind of have to work on for almost maybe the rest of their childhood, or at least the rest of their school age, to get caught back up? What does that kind of look like?
There is definitely no reason to believe that we can't fully recover from any delay that we might have experienced through COVID. With social emotional pieces, with behavior, with those skill sets, it's all taught. These are all skills that can be learned. And so we talk a lot about the fact that behavior is communication. Kids are just trying to share information with us in the best way they know how. If a kid could be successful, they would be, right? So as teachers, as educators, it is our awesome responsibility to help fill those skill sets. So if we're struggling with a certain behavior, if we're struggling with how to get along with our friends, or how to read emotions, or what does body language mean, what does all of those pieces, those are all things that can be taught. And so we really want to make sure that when we have a student that is struggling in some way with how they're showing up at school, we want to view that as something that they're communicating to us, and there's a skill. And so we want to identify the skill. We want to be really intentional about teaching the skill and then reinforcing it. And then the student has that for the rest of their life. So there's so much hope. It was a huge bump in the road, but it is certainly something that we can expect our students to fully come back from, with intentionality and with the right supports.
Good.
Well, I think, for Eric and I, that was a huge part of writing this book, was that this idea that, kids need that support and they need to be really explicitly and intentionally taught. But adults need help with that too, right? Like as school principals, or as building leaders, or, district administrators, we can't just look at our staff and say, we'll figure it out and get better. Like, this is just what you need to do. Like, we need to provide our staff with the supports and the tools and the strategies so they can be successful with students. And we're having to learn all kinds of different things, and how to adapt, and how to modify what we're doing, and how to pivot. And so we really want to make sure that educators are equipped with the skills in order to really best support our kids, because our kids deserve it, and so do our educators.
100%.
And it's not fair to look at an educator and say, be better at relationships. Like, what does that mean? How do you do that? You really have to provide the very specific and tangible skills and tools so that they can do that. Nobody shows up at work feeling like, oh, I think I'll be mediocre today. I'm going to kind of give it my half effort. We all want to do phenomenal at our jobs. And so we really wanted to be able to provide the really clear and concrete skills so that everyone is able to do that for their students.
Is this something the school should be pushing to say, hey, faculty, we want you to dive into this. Here's some books, here's some resources, here's some courses to dive into? Or should this really be like the faculty, the teachers, the administrators taking like that upon themselves to go, I'm going to grow in this area? Or is it something that really needs to be called up in them from the head of school principal to go, hey, like we all need to, or maybe one specific person needs to like grow in this area? Like, what does that kind of dynamic you see look like in the schools you've worked with?
I would say yes to both, right? So I think it is absolutely one of the unique things about this is that it is something you can individually do and have a tremendous impact on the students that you directly serve. And that's awesome and that's amazing. And we have lots of easy and accessible ways to get your hands on the information. It can be transformative if we have a whole building or a whole district with that set of skills. And with all of the tools that they need, we're using common language, we're using common techniques. And in that way, we can make sure that every single student is feeling loved and cared for at school. And so we love it when a whole school or district wants to move in that direction. And again, we have lots of tools and ways to do that because that's where we can really transform an experience for a student. And at the same time, if you're an individual and you're like, this is something I really want to work on, 100%, this is something you can fully implement yourself in your classroom or in your small groups, or as a building leader, you can certainly incorporate this as well. And what happens then is that, you know, the neighbor teacher or the principal across the way is like, how's that working? And then it just does kind of naturally grow. So either approach works. Yeah.
Tiffany, anything you want to add on that one?
No, I think, I do think, like we were talking about the teacher, and I love the quote that you used, Mitchell, that we're the thermostat, and there's a quote from Todd Whitaker that is when the principal sneezes, the whole school catches a cold. And it's this idea, and I think it's the exact same thing that's true for classrooms. But I think as the building leader, you do have a lot of responsibility. As a district leader, you do have a responsibility to say, this is how students are going to be treated in this space. And we want everyone in our buildings, in our schools, to come in and feel this deep sense of belonging and feel this sense of connection. We want to build a culture of connection. So yeah, it is absolutely powerful to have pockets of that. But if you have an entire organization that says, this is how we treat kids, and we love kids and they are the coolest people ever, and they deserve to be treated and cared for in this way, so we can set them up to be successful adults and successful contributing members to society. Yeah, I think that's important and powerful.
Just a little bit. Yeah, it's just a little bit. That's awesome. Well, I know you guys obviously wrote a book. You have some other resources. I'd love you to share those real quick about how people can get in touch with you, as well as your resources, your book, your course, all these things you guys have.
Well, so Eric and I are teachers, so that means that we just like to give stuff out. So on our website, www.connectingthroughconversation.com, we have tons and tons of free resources. You can become a member and download a book study guide for our book. We've got, all kinds of different like free downloads for folks. We do a blog that we put out every month. And then I get really excited about this. Just a couple weeks ago on Valentine's Day, we launched our first online course. So Eric and I travel all over and do professional development for folks. And what we hear all the time is, oh my gosh, this is so great. I don't have time. Like, I don't have all of this professional development time to be able to dedicate to give, to all of our staff. And so, but do you have something maybe that's recorded? And so we did it. We went and filmed and recorded an online course that are mini lessons. They're 5 to 15 minutes in length. It's about 2 hours total of content. And it comes with a bunch of like reflection questions or questions for discussion. And like you said, folks could do this on their own. Folks could also buy a site license, which has a major discount, just so people know. But then their whole staff can really create this common language so they can do it together. And we're excited because it's this flexible kind of turnkey PD that we feel like could be really helpful for people that are wanting to transform behavior and build a culture of connection in their school.
Awesome.
And
Erica,
of
you want
course,
to share
there's
anything?
also the book, buy the book,
Oh, yeah.
Connecting Through Conversation, a playbook for talking with students. And like Tiffany said, we love visiting districts. We love visiting schools and providing professional development in that way as well. So reach out to us, get connected. We would love to hear from y'all.
Love it. All right. Well, last question for both of you before we close it out. I want you each to answer individually on this one. But I know all this was advice, of course, for the school leaders. But if you were to share one more piece of advice with those school leaders listening, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say care out loud every day.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's when these jobs are really hard. If you've chosen education, you are doing a hard job. Thank you for doing it. We need passionate, dedicated people doing this really important work. So thank you. And when it gets hard for me, what I have to focus on is I have to go back to that connection. It's important for us also. It's important for us to feel connected to those that we're working with. It's important for us to feel connected to our students. That's what's going to feed us and fuel us moving forward. And that is why we say at the very heart of education is connection. So if you start feeling a little bit down in the dumps, find that place where you can reignite that connection and focus in on that.
So true. And I know you guys are probably obviously aware of just this idea too, but they say you're always the average of your 5 closest friends.
Yes.
And so if you're in a bad spot, like, look, who are you hanging out with on a regular basis? I obviously goes for the students too. Like, who are they hanging out with? But as adults, if you're around all the negative people that are speaking bad over you or whatever, or just those ones that are just draining, they're not filling the bucket of life for you, get around the people that are positive. They're going to pour into you, love you, and help you be a better person, more excited person, and a better educator, I would say as well.
We just wrote a whole blog post on this. It's called Neural Synchronicity, but Erica and I call it "You Are Who You Eat Lunch With."
Mm-hmm. You always have to rename everything. Are you saying you get it?
Yeah, we do like to write.
That's awesome. Well, ladies, thank you for what you're doing to help bring educators forward and move them into a better spot where they're able to educate their students better and obviously bring that into their families as well. So love what you guys are doing. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be on the podcast, and wishing you both nothing but the best.
Thank you so much.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Erica and Tiffany for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love what they're doing to help schools and districts and teachers to learn to better connect through conversation, which is obviously what the whole episode was about. So big shout out to them. Thank you guys for what you're doing, and wishing nothing but the best as you continue to spread that through more of the schools and teachers and educators across the country. And as always, I'm hoping you guys were able to take at least one thing away from today's episode that you can take back to your school or yourself to make yourself or your school better than they are right now. And one of the ways we do that, we have 3 actually that are free for you guys to check out. The 3 free things for you to make sure you are being more successful as an educator are the 3 things I'm about to share with you, which are, the first one is the podcast. So we drop new episodes every single week on Monday morning. So make sure you're subscribed to those. And if you're loving our content, we would truly love a 5-star review. So if you stop right now and look and see if you give us a 5-star review and you haven't, we would love one of those. If you're loving our content, we appreciate that very much. We're dropping episodes every week of the School Success Podcast. So make sure you tune in for those. And then on our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com, in the top right-hand corner, there is a button called the School Success Report. We send that out every single week with different articles the team has put together to help you, the teacher, the educator, the administrator, be more successful. We want to make sure you're getting that in your inbox every single week. Share it with your other friends and educators in the space as well. We'd appreciate that. And last but not least, our private Facebook community called School Success Makers. We'd love to see you guys in there. I'm personally in there. Obviously, we'd love to see you guys in there as well. Different ways to connect with teachers and educators across the country and ask questions, connect with them, share insights of where you're at as an educator. And we want it to be an active place where you guys can get to know each other and not feel alone in this space. Because sometimes I know it can be a little overwhelming and alone. We want to make sure you don't feel that way. So make sure you join the School Success Makers community on Facebook. I think that's it. I talked for a while on that outro, so apologies, guys. But we'll be back here next week with another awesome guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.